One of Power BI's biggest and arguably most impactful updates of 2023 was the new card visual. Now, the new card was introduced in preview in June 2023, and the release was pretty big. It gave you the ability to add and format multiple fields within a single card visual so that you could turn individual cards like this into a single native visual like this. It also added some brand new functionality like tooltips and drill throughs, along with new styling and layout options, plus the addition of things like images and accent bars. So that was pretty great, but in the November 2023 update, they added some brand new functionality to these new cards, specifically reference labels. So reference labels allow you to build cards like this, which can include additional metrics like last month, forecast, etc. You can add detailed text to call out things like percent or volume change, and add conditional formatting to draw attention to positive or negative trends. So in this demo, I'm going to show you how you can make the most of these new card visuals, and as a bonus, I'll also show you how to use scalable vector graphics or SVGs with custom embedded visuals like this sparkline here. So here we're looking at our AdventureWorks report. And you remember with these cards at the top of our exec dashboard, we kind of had to do this manually. We added 4 separate card visuals. We added shapes for the background. We grouped it all together. So the first thing I want to show you is how the new card visual can really help replicate something like this. So I'm going to add a new tab here. I'm going to call it New Card Demo. And let's go ahead and insert a new card visual. It looks just like the old card visual, except has a lightning bolt in preview mode. If you don't see this, head to your options and make sure to check that box in the preview settings for the new card visual. So go ahead and drop that onto the canvas, stretch it out a little bit. In this case, we're just going to drop the fields that we need into the data pane. And let's go ahead and just replicate what we had in that exec dashboard view. So we had total revenue, we had total profits, we had total orders, and we had return rate. And check it out. Already, we've got all 4 of those metrics contained within one single visual instead of 4. Now let's talk about how we can start formatting this visual. I'm going to fire up my formatting pane here, and we're going to go through all of these different options. Don't really need to do anything with size and style. Don't need a visual level title. We're going to go into shape. One thing I do like to do for a lot of my cards is use the rounded rectangle. And I like to do something like a 10% rounded corner. I think that looks pretty nice. And if we go to layout, we can change things like alignment, and we can add a little bit of buffer or space between the cards. In this case, let's go ahead with a 20 pixel buffer. Next up, we can drill into our callout values and actually change the formatting of these numbers. And with most of these formatting menus, you'll have the option to apply universal changes to all of the series, or you can make specific changes to individual series. So there are a few updates that I want to make to everything, like the font. Let's go Seago UI, do size 40 in bold, and we're going to use my favorite blue. And yes, I have memorized the hex code. It's 20E2D7, like so. And by default, let's show 1 decimal place. So that looks pretty good. Suppose I wanted a second decimal place for a metric like return rate. In that case, I would scroll up, select that specific series, and then go back down and add the second decimal just to that field. We can also edit the labels as well. So let's go ahead back to all series, drill into our label formatting options. Let's go Seago UI, maybe 11 points, and I'm going to make these white because I'm going to do a dark gray fill in the background of these cards. You can change the position as well. You can do text wrap, all sorts of stuff there. But that's all I need to do as far as callout value formatting is concerned. Now I'm going to skip over reference labels. We're going to talk about that in a bit. We'll add images in just a bit as well. But the card option, this is where I can apply some kind of general styling to each of these 4 cards. So you can do custom padding or default. You can add or modify the background. In this case, I like a nice dark gray background. And then you've got some other features here. Don't really need a border if we've got the background fill. You can do crazy things with shadows or glows. Don't really need to deal with that right now. But I do like the accent bar here. So you can do the accent bar on the left, top, bottom, or right. Let's give it that bright blue color. In this case, you can see it pop in the left. I'm just going to add a little bit of width here, maybe 4 or 5 pixels, something kind of subtle like so. Now, last thing I want to do is add some small images or icons. So I can head into images, which is a new feature of these new cards, and I can apply some universal settings to how I want to handle these images. Let's go ahead and activate it. And by default, let's put these to the left of our label text here. We'll put 6 pixels of space, and I want my images to be pretty small, about 30 pixels. This is probably one of those things that's going to take some trial and error depending on the image sizes that you're using, but I know that 30 works pretty well for mine. So once we've got those universal settings, I can drill into each individual setting and I can browse for an image file. So here's a revenue icon in white with a transparent background. That looks pretty good. Go into profit, browse for that icon, head into orders. There we go. And finally, return rates. So there you have it. So much simpler to be working with one single visual that captures all 4 of these metrics. So that's level 1 stuff. Now let's take it up a notch to level 2 and start seeing how these brand new reference labels actually work. So to do that, I'm going to copy and paste that card visual we just created. And instead of going through the same process for all 4 of these metrics, I'm going to simplify things for the demo and just focus on one for now. So just revenue. And let's resize things a little bit like so. And basically what I want to do here is recreate something like we had here in our executive dashboard with our revenue order and return KPI cards, which remember, instead of showing the kind of top line aggregate totals, in this case, we're looking at the current month and comparing it against the previous month with a % change. So let's jump back in. First thing I'm going to do is change the filter context here so that we're only looking at the current month of data. Let's go ahead and drill into our filter pane, and we're going to need that start of month field. I'm going to add a visual level filter with a top N. We're going to show the top 1 month based on the latest month. That's going to give me total revenue of 1.8. If we go back into formatting, call out values, we can add a second decimal place. Now, when you're dealing with reference labels, the rounded rectangle style doesn't really work so well. So let's go back into our options here, go into shape, and I'm going to change this back to a standard rectangle. And now let's talk about what these reference labels are all about. First things first, I'm going to add some universal formats, and we're going to turn on things like a divider line that's going to create a visual separation between my KPI value and the reference labels beneath it. Let's make that a bright blue with a width of 2. And the background fill where our reference labels will be, I want that to be just kind of a standard white. And it's kind of tough. I can't see what's changing because I don't have any reference labels yet. But as soon as I add one, you'll see what those formats that I just applied actually look like. So let's select a series, total revenue, and let's add a label. So what measure can we pull in that we want to display here that would give us some helpful context around this month's revenue? Well, maybe the previous month revenue. Let's go ahead and select that. And boom, it's dropped it in. Now what I love about this is that we can format every single component of this. So we can select that label, previous month revenue. We can customize the title. Let's make it a little bit simpler, last month. And we can also format just the value component of that label as well in here. We can make it bold, for instance. And instead of choosing auto display units, which rolled it up to the 2M that we see here, we can choose none and show the actual entire value. Now we can go ahead and add additional fields here as well. So we can add a second label. This time maybe we want something like the revenue target that adds another line right beneath our old label. And again, we could do some formatting here for the new label, revenue target. Let's do custom, just call it target. And for the value, same story here. We can make it bold and no display units. So now we can see that our current month revenue is 1.83. Last month we were about 1.77. Our target was 1.945. We can add one more layer of detail here using the detail option that we can assign to any individual label. So right now we're looking at the revenue target label and what kind of additional detail can we provide around that target. If you remember, we had a measure that was called revenue target gap, essentially the difference between current month revenue and the target. So if we select that as our detail, now we can see that our target was 1.945 million and we fell short by about 118,000. But we're not done. One thing that I love is that there are so many places you can apply conditional formatting. Anytime you see that FX icon, it means that you can get a little bit more fancy and conditionally format things like fonts or fills or background colors, even accent bars. So in this case, let's add some conditional formatting to the color of the font for that detail here. And what we're going to do is a rule-based format and basically say, hey, if that revenue target gap is negative, right? If it's greater than or equal to the minimum value and less than 0, right? If it's a negative value, let's show that with a red font. Otherwise, if it's greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to the maximum value, then maybe we choose a green here, or maybe we just show it with a dark gray. Press OK. And now check it out. That gap figure changed to red because our current month revenue fell short of the target. Pretty amazing stuff that we're able to produce in really just the matter of a few minutes. But if you want to get even fancier, if you want to get even more advanced, the first thing I want to show you is how we can take these detail labels and add things like icons or graphics using DAX measures and unicar functions. So check this out. I'm going to head to my data view. And remember, we've got that revenue target gap measure. I'm going to add a new measure here, and I'm going to call this revenue target gap with arrow. And I'm going to paste some code here and then explain it so that you don't have to see me type it all out bit by bit. So what we see here is initially we're creating 3 variables, an up arrow, a down arrow, and revenue gap. Now, up arrow and down arrow are both defined using the unicar function, which pulls in a unicar code like the ones that you see here, and essentially embeds an icon and treats it like a character that you can concatenate with other measures or other text strings. Now you can look up unicar tables to figure out how to find these codes for different symbols or icons, but I'm using code for an up arrow that I like, which is 129129, and a basic down arrow, which is 129131. And our revenue gap variable is just our revenue target gap measure. Now in the return component of our measure, we can add some conditional logic and basically just say if that revenue gap is negative, if we fell short of our target, then I want to return the revenue gap value with a space and the down arrow. Otherwise, show me the revenue gap with an up arrow. Because we're concatenating text and characters here, this measure will be formatted as a string. So to preserve the currency format that I want, what I'm doing is rounding the result of that measure to 0 places, and then I'm wrapping that in a format function to display it as a currency format. So let's go ahead and save that new measure. And now all we need to do is go back to our visual, head to the formatting pane, go back to reference labels, all the way down to detail. And now instead of revenue target gap, we're going to use revenue target gap with arrows, and check it out. We get that same value, 118,000, with that unicar down arrow as well. Now you might be saying, all right, Chris, that's cool, but what about those awesome spark lines that we could add with the native KPI cards? How could we do something like that? Well, you can do that with SVGs. Those are scalable vector graphics, and there are a few things that are really awesome about SVGs. Number 1, you can resize them to any size or dimensions without losing quality. They're supported by virtually every single browser. And the best part, you can use XML code to define different elements of an SVG, like the color, shape, size, position, and more. So our goal here is to use a custom SVG to embed a sparkline similar to those existing KPI cards, but much, much cooler. So let's go ahead and start by copying and pasting this existing visual. And similar story here, I'm just going to demo with the revenue field. I don't need to do this 4 separate times. and drag it over here like so. Now, if you're really skilled with XML and you're familiar with SVGs, you can write this code from scratch. I'm not, so what I do is find great templates online and then modify them to suit my needs. So here's one amazing site where you can find some really cool templates. It's called kerrykolasco.com. And if you head to this website, you can drill into templates and you'll find SVG templates here. And the one that I'm going to use is the gradient area sparkline with last point. So what we can do here is scroll down and you'll see all of this code which defines that SVG visual. You can click the clipboard to copy it. And let's head back to Power BI and add this to a brand new measure. So let's go to data, add a new measure, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste all that code in. You can see it looks really scary. We've got a bunch of errors, but don't worry. With a little bit of deductive reasoning, we can modify this to do exactly what we need. So let's go ahead and change the measure title to something like revenue sparkline. Now there are a couple updates that I need to make. If you scroll through, you'll see a few places where date fields are referenced from a financials table. Obviously, we don't have a financials table in our model. This is just a placeholder. And we see a measure here called sum of gross sales that we'll need to swap in for our total revenue measure as well. So let's do our dates first. And instead of financials date, I want this sparkline to be at the monthly level. So I'm going to go to our calendar lookup and find the start of month field. And now I'm just going to copy and paste that, replace every instance that I can find of financials date. And you can see I've got a financials table reference here, which will need to be updated with calendar lookup. And now let's do the same thing with this measure. I'm going to change from sum gross sales to total revenue. And there are a few instances where I'll need to copy and paste that measure. So I think I've gotten all of the instances accounted for here. And just to be clear, I really have no idea what a lot of this code is doing, especially this XML custom format stuff here at the end. But it's pretty clear what fields we need to swap in to customize this to suit our needs. So let's go ahead and press enter here. That's going to save our measure. And now let's go back to our visual, open up formatting, head to images, and let's go to total revenue, get rid of that JPEG that we added. And now instead of image, we're going to use image URL and click that function icon. We're going to use the field value format style and base it on that measure we just created. So let's press OK. You can see a tiny 30 pixel image got added here to the left of our label. That's a good start, but obviously we need to do a little bit of format tweaking here. So let's change our universal settings to bump this up to like 200. And instead of left of text, let's put it below the text. Do a little resizing. And that's looking pretty good. The only thing I don't like is this kind of weird blue and the fade to gray. So let's go back to measures. We'll search for that sparkline measure. Now what I'm going to do is look for these hex codes, and I'm going to replace them with the 20E2D7, and I'm going to use a hex code for dark gray to match the background, which is 333333. So I'm going to go through and make those updates here. 20E2D7, and instead of white, I'm going to use another hex code. Looks like I need to include the %23 for compatibility, then 333333. For these stop colors, I want that blue, E2D7. And this will generally be a trial and error exercise. You might make a few changes, save the measure, see how it impacts the visual, then go back and make some more. That's kind of what I did here to realize that these were the exact places that I would need to make these changes. So I think those hex code updates look good. Last thing I want to do is just drop the stroke width down a little bit from 3 to 2 for the line and also for that last point. And let's just scroll up, make sure things look good. It looks like we need a hash on that stop color hex code right there. And let's go ahead and press enter and see how that impacted our visual. So boom, check it out. There is our beautifully formatted sparkline. So there you have it. That's our crash course in Power BI's brand new card visual. Hope you found it helpful. Hope you learned a thing or two, and I will see you in the next one.